Hello, 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 and welcome to WTF. What the footy? Which means more today than you will know. He's Joe Rudder. I'm Robert Gregory. Technical difficulties. I'm just going to come out and say it. It's fine. This is episode 14 for June 8th, 2026. Joe, pretty exciting weekend of footy.
Yes, it was for both of our teams. They won.
I was just going to say, your Blues, not one, not two, not three, 4 victories in a row under interim coach Josh Frazier, who doesn't want the job. That's not true. He doesn't think he doesn't think what? He doesn't think he's ready for the job, right?
Exactly. He does not
Yeah.
think he's ready.
Yeah, he's about the only one in the world right now that doesn't think he's ready for that job. Is now Carlton just a game and percentage points. So you kind of want to say 2 games maybe, right? 2 games out of a wild card spot. You know, technically 1, but because their percentage is so bad, maybe 2 games.
And
then there's my Dees.
So, yeah.
Yeah, there's my Dees, who started the week 6th, went all the way down to 9, and they got a win early this morning over Collingwood, who we warned people they're going to have trouble finding points. So the Dees are now 5th, and any complaints that I have about this team have vaporized. You will never hear me complain about this team ever again, I'm sure. So our Blues were victorious. Our Dees were victorious. But now we get to the part of the show where we play our victory song of the week. And Joe, who do we have this week?
We have a team that started 4-0, then kind of went into the tank, and we didn't know if we'd hear from them again. But now the Western Bulldogs have climbed back up to 6th. Right now, looking like, if season were to end today, would avoid the wild card spot. Really a good place.
Insane.
What's that?
Insane.
Yeah, insane that they're back. They're playing well. I even said in our midseason report last week, I thought this was a team to watch. So we're going to go with their fight song. With the words.
I like having the lyrics there. That's nice.
We come out snarling, Bulldogs through and through. Bulldogs fight and Bulldogs roar. We give our very best. But you can't beat the boys of the Bulldog breed. We're the team of the mighty West.
Woo. Joe, it's an actual victory song. It's got pep. It's got spirit.
It has everything you want.
It's not like the Bagger's Waltz that you've got.
No, but it is based on the song the Boys of the Sea. It's called The Boys of the West, based on a song called Boys of the Sea from the 1930s. They changed it when they relocated, when they rechanged the name to Western. I think it was 97.
Yeah.
If I'm not mistaken, they were what, Fitzroy? Fitzcray before that. And so they kind of changed the words a little bit to Sons of the West, Boys of the West, whatever it is. But I thought it was appropriate for this week to give them their due, especially after we never picked them during their 4-0 start. And I wondered when we could, and now we know.
77-71 over Hawthorn. And like we said, I mean, we thought this team was dead in the water. They played 3 horrible games. Yeah. They were banged up, and they're still banged up. But unlike some banged up teams in this league, they found a way to win. And now, like you just said, they're not only are they out of the wild card part of the ladder, they're in the top 6.
Yeah, they're the top 6. And what was impressive was they came from way back. I think they were doubled up at halftime by Hawthorn. And Hawthorn's one of the top 4 team right now. And
yeah,
come back and get that kind of win. To me, that makes a statement that Western is going to be a tough out when it comes to the postseason. And I think you can pencil these guys in for a final spot, unless injuries just come in the second half and decimate them again. But they're really playing good footy. And Marcus Bontempelli has kind of carried this team. And he wasn't as big of a player in this last win, but he had his fingerprints on it enough that shows why he's the captain.
They've got the Thursday night footy match this week. So they're back on prime time against Adelaide. And they're actually a 2.5-point favorite. And we'll talk about the fixture later on in the show. We'll also go over all of the results. Talk a little bit more about my D's and your Blues. Let's get into some other things, though. More slurs this week from a league that likes to act like they're serious about slurs. This time, a Gold Coast player, Max Noble. In Sunday's game, his VFL, another VFL instance. His game against Brisbane, so he's going to be under investigation. Minimum punishment seems like it's been 4 games, but this is the 8th time in the last 2.5 years. And I hate to say this, not that the appeals court was right in, what do I say, their logic, but maybe they did touch on something where they mentioned that this was a commonplace thing. I don't want to think that, but it just keeps happening over and over again, Joe.
It does, and the fact it's happening in the VFL where the players are younger by tradition is a bit troubling. They're trying to really crack down on the AFL level. You guys to learn this at a young age and have that out of their system or not doing it, by the time they get to the AFL. It's not setting a good example for these guys. And the AFL seems to be trying to weed it out, but the message apparently isn't getting through, at least on the lower levels of play.
Yeah, at the same time, the integrity unit is investigating racist direct messages to Hawthorn's Mabior Chol after their loss to Western. Of course, a lot of, torqued off fans out there, but apparently this is not the first time that he has been the target of racist direct messages. And in fact, he posted some of them on Instagram and said, "Don't be this guy." So, I mean, it's not just, I think we come to expect it from the populace in general.
Mm-hmm.
But you feel like there ought to be some kind of filter system within the teams themselves, right?
I would think so, and it's a shame that these messages, these DMs are getting through from fans to these players. You want players to interact with the fans, and you want to have a good rapport back and forth, but there's just no place for that. You can't be, and I don't know the player or his background. Was he an Indigenous player? Is that why they're coming at him?
Well, he is from South Sudan, so
okay.
He does have ethnicity with him, and like I said, This isn't the first time that he's been a target of these racist direct messages on social media. I don't know whether it was Instagram as just where he reposted some of these. Mm-hmm. I can imagine maybe it was, but again, just a troubling pattern going on in the VFL and the AFL with some of this behavior. And it could be, not that we could ever make too much of it, but we do kind of cherry pick, don't we, with these instances?
I would say so. Yeah, I would think so. I mean, we're bringing them up when we're hearing about them. I don't know if there's more that go unreported. I don't know if there's more over here in American sports that aren't known or aren't reported like this.
I'm sure.
I'm sure there are too.
Yeah, I'm
they're
sure.
Just not coming to light, but it seems like it is coming to light over there. And maybe it is a serious problem in Australia. I don't know that, but that's if it is, it's something they need to correct. And I'm sure the AFL is trying the best to keep their play. I mean, they do so many things for the players with these Indigenous rounds,
absolutely,
and these charity things, and it seems like they're really into giving back to the community. And this is just something you don't want to see because it tarnishes all the good that the AFL is trying to do.
Yeah, I mean, I know it's our stance that any instance that can be put under the microscope or magnified so everybody can hear, I think is important. I think you feel the same way. Yeah. So unfortunately, we'll have to keep our eye on yet another investigation for racial slurs and homophobic slurs in the VFL and the AFL. Let's switch gears. I didn't think we could talk about this subject again after my diatribe in the early days of this show about the new stadium going up for the Tasmania Devils. But apparently it's become a big story again. Footy on 9 is quoting what they call a blockbuster report that says the price of their new stadium, which I think we last quoted at what, 1.1, 1.2 billion?
1.13, I think, was the figure we started.
Is that the number? Is that the number we had? Well, this report suggests it has ballooned to 1.5 and could go as high as 1.8. Now, keep in mind, the original price of this stadium was $775 million. So we were already coming up on twice that amount. And the AFL is trying to be clear. Listen, we promised to pay for some of this, but we are not going to be parallel with these overruns. And apparently this morning, the AFL gets its first meeting face-to-face with the team presidents of the league. And there's every indication that it might get a little chippy concerning this team and their new stadium.
And it's only a 25,000 seat stadium.
Yeah.
Isn't that correct? It's not like they're building SoFi Stadium in LA, which is holding 8,000-9,000 people. So it's head scratching on why the costs keep going up. Unless it's going to be some state of the art palace, even if it only holds, 25,000. I know it's going to have a roof and everything, but it just seems crazy. And I was just thinking of this while you were mentioning the cost overruns. I don't know if they have a good nickname for the stadium yet, but over here, I think it's in New Mexico, a basketball arena. They call it the Pit.
Yeah,
they could call that place the Money Pit.
Maybe
the way the cost overruns are going.
So this study was commissioned. This has to be mentioned too. The study was commissioned by this grassroots organization known as Our Place. And probably not hard to believe, they are anti-stadium.
Yeah.
So there's that side of this bombshell report. But the other side is this. They quote an economist, Dr. Nicholas Groen. He's the one giving these figures. Thing about that is, he's the same economist the league commissioned in their report some time ago to talk about the cost of this stadium. So despite the fact that we have sort of perhaps a one-sided bombshell report, we're using the same source for both. And as the story on Footy on 9 stresses, you can't have it both ways. You either believe it or you don't. So then these numbers, 1.5, how do you spend $1.8 billion on a stadium as small as what you're suggesting? And I think I said this before, and I was talking about the translucent roof, but this is just getting ridiculous.
Yeah, it's getting out of hand, and I don't know if this is some special state of the art type of roof, but maybe they just got to go back to the old fashioned dome that other teams that use. Even if it's not retractable, just throw something on there to keep these costs down. It's crazy to hear what it's going to be. And because of this, no wonder this team's not going to get in here for a couple more years. I kept thinking, wow, you got everything in place where you're getting this team ready to join the league, and you keep pushing them back. Well, now we see why. I mean, and they're getting, they're ending Hawthorne's relationship over there. Might as well extend it. Give them some footy to watch until they get this thing ready, because it might be a while.
The report does mention, sort of editorializes a little bit, that there isn't one step in this process that hasn't been rammed through. That everybody is bound and determined to make this 2028 season date as best as they can. Yet these overruns keep increasing. And from their understanding, Footy at 9, and I guess that would be our understanding too, there's still really nothing on paper between the league and this Tassie franchise that promises them a conditional contract for the 2028 season. I mean, we're midway through 2026 at this point. I mean, 2028 is going to be right around the corner, whether they like it or not. And so how do you have a stadium that might not be done, first of all, no matter what they say? They keep saying it's on track, but I don't know how. Maybe they're keeping it on track by having the cost of this stadium go through the roof. I mean, I guess that's possible. But if that's the case, is it worth spending another $400 million just to stay on calendar?
Yeah, I mean, you got to you get to a point where if it's going to be like this, maybe pump the brakes a little bit and get this thing, give it another year. And I've heard talk of they're trying to now search for 20th team when they haven't even figured the 19th team out yet and gotten that situated. So it's kind of some crazy goings on in the behind the scenes stuff and the politics of the AFL as it comes to that Tasmania franchise.
Yeah, I mean it's what, the Macquarie Point site in Hobart where Ninja Stadium is, where Hawthorn will be playing this week, as you know, part of that agreement where they get about $1 million 4 times a year to play in Tassie. I mean, that's what they're losing for Tassie kicking them out.
I like the name Ninja Stadium, though. I hope they keep that.
I hope I'm not mispronouncing that. I hope it's not like Ninja Stadium or something like that, because that would happen to me. Let me tell you. So anyway, I guess, I mean, up to $1.8 billion. I mean, you got to be kidding me. I mean, there aren't franchises in this country worth $1.8 billion.
Yeah,
this is crazy.
And they have that.
This is crazy, and I know that there is a currency. What did we say it was? Was it like 2/3 or something like that? Even if it's 2/3, 1.8, is what, around 1.2 billion in US dollar. I mean, there are franchises in this country worth that much.
Yep.
I mean, you got to be a blue blood franchise in this country to be worth that much.
Yeah, it's it's crazy, and it makes you wonder where the money's going, and what they're squandering it on, because that's a heck of a lot of money to play for a place that seats so few people to watch footy.
I mean, if they are putting the pedal to the metal as far as trying to get this thing done for 2028, for opening day 2028, I think it's easy to see how that kind of pace would cost more. But I mean, when you start at 775 and you're talking about numbers at 1.8, I mean, how do you live with yourself? How do these team presidents this morning face the AFL and say, what is going on here?
Something doesn't add up. Something definitely doesn't add up. And, I can't wait to read about this and see what kind of answers come out of these meetings, because, the future of at least one franchise hangs in the balance. And you've got a lot of it, like Hawthorn, that wants to play some games over there and has established a little bit of a fan base. They're going to be impacted by this as well.
I'll say one more thing that Footy on 9 mentioned, that the citizens of Tasmania right now, it's a government-funded project that's going to be helped by the AFL, but they don't seem to understand how it affects them now, and it doesn't really affect them now, but in 2028 and beyond, darn well it'll affect them through taxes. It'll affect them through their licenses, through all the paraphernalia and merchandise, and
they sell,
buying a pint at the corner bar, it's going to be because it's got to get paid for somehow.
Yeah, and I'm sure they'll start taxing things to make it happen. That's they did that here when they constructed the 2 stadiums 25 years ago. Yeah,
boy, this just sounds. It doesn't sound like there is any road that doesn't lead to a mess. If it's not a mess already.
Yeah, Well, it seems like
And
it's been
that's a shame because I mean that's an island that's just starved for a team, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I mean, why else would they pay $1 million a game to have Hawthorn come in and play to give them a taste of Australia's sport?
Yeah,
It's a shame.
and it's they're starved for it. They want to get it, and and I mean, I hope this shows the interest that's there, and that they can add another team to get to an even 20. It still seems weird. They're going to have 19 at
Yeah.
some point, but
Yeah.
I like to see the footy, the sport grow, and but certainly, if another team's going to try to come in that's already not playing in an established stadium, it's going to make the AFL think twice about trying to add another franchise.
Yeah. And is University of Tasmania Stadium that bad that they can't play there for a couple years?
Yeah, I don't.
I mean,
I don't know.
that has been a site for Hawthorn throughout their entire contract.
And I'm surprised they're not doing that. Why not? Why not start them there, play there for a year or two? I mean, teams have done it here.
Yeah.
Teams have done it in the NFL. The San Diego LA Chargers playing a soccer stadium for a couple of years. That was seated 27,000 while they were getting their big stadium ready. So there is precedent here. I don't know why over there they can't do the same thing.
Well, we'll keep an eye on it. So
I mean, look at the Oakland/Sacramento A's.
Oh my God, right, Vegas A's, yeah.
Tampa Bay Rays playing at a spring training site because their roof of their dome got caved in. So I mean, if they can do it over here, and
they had to deal with a natural disaster.
Yeah,
did the Rays?
Yes,
and it wasn't the best situation, but they made it work.
Yep.
They made it work. So, well, we'll keep our eyes on this one too, because like I said, this just keeps getting messier and messier and messier. Let's talk about some happier things, Joe. Let's talk about your Carlton Blues.
Oh, that's a subject that I died talking about a month ago, but I am glad to discuss now.
I don't know what to say after last week, because it shouldn't have been a trap game against Essendon. And after 3 quarters, it was. So what happened to the Blues?
I think it just took them a while to get going, to wake up. Historically this year, Carlton get a strong first half, go in the tank in the second half, and lose leads. It was the opposite against Essendon. Got off to a really sluggish start. Took them a while to claw out of it. But if you want to, if you're encouraged as a fan, like I am, you're happy to see that they put it together in the second half, pulled ahead, and held on to get the win. It wasn't a great win. They beat the worst team in the league, but they only beat them by what? It was 5 points.
5 points, 72-67 was the final.
They were up by 11, and then Essendon got a late goal.
Yeah,
things a little dicey. But yeah, you got to be happy that you just get the win at this point. I'm not going to cry over how they get these wins as long as they get them. I mean, they're coming off a big win against Geelong, a big upset. So, you play the last place team in the league. I think you're happy to scratch it out and get the 4 points, especially going into the bye. And then you come back against GWS next week, and hopefully they're properly focused for that game. That's the game that kind of concerns me coming out of the bye, because they're playing a team right now that's in playoff contention. They're sitting in that 10 spot.
Yeah. And the only other thing I'll say is, and we kind of made a point about this, especially with Carlton's upcoming schedule, how many bottom feeders that they're going to play, is that they really need to put their foot down, because their percentage is crap. Yeah. Okay. They're going to lose every single tiebreaker they come up against, at the end of the season. So while a victory against Essendon is while you want the 4 points, boy, you want it to do more for your percentage than what it did.
Yeah, it didn't do really anything for their percentage, and and if you're going to lose, I mean, I don't think they're going to run the table the rest of the way, but they will have losses here and there. But if that happens, you can't get blown out either. To undo any of the good you've done. So you just got to try to keep clawing away at it. And the fact, the fun thing is, there's 10 weeks left, and they've got a chance to who would have thought we were talking about this, at the beginning of May.
Not me.
Not me either.
Not me. I was too busy calling for Michael Voss's head.
Yeah.
For about 6 weeks.
Yep. And Josh Frazier, he's done a great job. And they keep asking him I saw the post-game interview where they were asking him, do you think you should deserve this job? And he said, I'm going to give you the same answer I've always given you. And then they turned it around and said, well, if the board comes to you, the GM comes to you and says, we'd like to extend the job to you, what would you say? And he goes, that's a hypothetical I just don't want to get into. We've got a lot of footy left.
Smart.
Yeah, smart guy. And
Smart.
It was a good answer. And you just keep going down that path because
Yeah,
as he's done in his four games. Look at Essendon's interim coach. They've lost 2 in a row since he's taken over.
Yeah.
So it could be the flip side. And I like the way he's kept this team together. I think he has a future with this club. I hope they don't let him get away. But let's see how this thing plays out over the next 2 months.
Yeah, smart of him to keep the focus on the field and the schedule, the upcoming schedule. Because as great as this run has been, they're not there yet, right?
They're not. They're not there yet. And he's been good. He's been quick to put it on the players for listening to him, for buying in, on Captain Patrick Cripps for kind of leading the way, showing these guys they've emphasized young players. They're bringing guys up all the time from the VFL. They're kind of buying in, and they've been a fun team to watch, and that's all you can hope for. It's funny if you said at midpoint Carlton's sitting at 13th, I'd have said, okay, I can see that, but I wouldn't have expected 1-8 followed by a 4-0 start. 5-8 after 13 games. So I'm encouraged by what they've shown now, and I'm just a little disappointed I can't watch them play this week. I'll have to settle for watching the Dees, I guess.
Well, the Dees have their rematch with the Dons this week.
Yes.
And let's talk a little bit about the Dons.
All
right. So here's our handy dandy team card that we had last week during our midseason report. And as you can see, I failed to maybe edit the bottom of the card. Maybe forgot about that. It's from our midseason report. But I did update the rest of it, including all of the icons at the top. They should be in the correct order of the ladder as of today. But let's talk about the Bombers just for a second, because I heard something very interesting at the end of the radio broadcast on ABC following Carlton's victory. And it was mentioned that there are at least half a dozen players that are about 2 or 3 weeks away from returning to this squad. Half a dozen starters.
Mm-hmm.
And that got me to thinking. Because not knowing how advanced these injuries were when, I gave you my projected ladder for the rest of the season. Of course, there's Essendon down at the bottom. I don't know that I had them winning another game. I think you had them at the bottom.
I did.
No, we both had them as wooden spoon winners, of the Invitational sponsored by 4 and 20 meat pies. I haven't forgotten about that, by the way. But look at their remaining schedule if you go 2 to 3 weeks out. And that's what the gray is. That's what the gray is on this card, is a hypothetical if they get players back. I think it's safe to say it will not be the same Bombers team that has stumbled to a 1-12 start. And this is going to be bad news for teams like St. Kilda. You see them at 12. Brisbane at 9. Greater Western at 10. Adelaide at 8. I mean, the deeper you get into the season, hypothetically, the deeper you get into the season, the healthier this team is going to become. Do they sit at 4 points the rest of the season?
Probably not. And, you could look at it several ways. You can look at it, starting with Brisbane, they've got a run of 6 straight games of teams that are right now in the top 10. You could say, oh, boy, that's a gauntlet. And Essendon's really going to, take it on the chin in those games. But if they're getting healthy, that's a good chance for them to play spoilers and maybe some of these teams to overlook them where they could sneak a win or two out of this. So if you're Brisbane, Greater Western Sydney, Hawthorn, Adelaide, Geelong, and Sydney, maybe you don't want to play Essendon at that point of the schedule because Essendon could be, trying to get out of that bottom spot and work their way up the ladder a little bit to save a little face, especially under the interim coach.
I mean, I can see this being the second best story of the second half of the season. The best, of course, being Carlton's resurgence. into playoff contention, if not a wild card berth, right? But the Bombers as spoiler is really, really intriguing to me because they will have the biggest chip ever on their shoulder, being kicked in the face all season, slowly starting to get some of their players back. Don't be surprised if we see a Brisbane shock, a Greater Western shock. I mentioned those two teams because they've been so up and down. They've been, so inconsistent.
Yeah.
And I think that's the best friend of Essendon right now, isn't it?
And I would put Adelaide in that category as well.
Yeah.
Up and down. I mean, Geelong's been struggling lately. So, yeah, I mean, they get these players back. Now, the other thing to watch is, they're kind of going back and forth on, the old coach is lobbying to come back.
Yeah.
And whether they bring him in or not before the end of the season, I guess that remains to be seen, whether they just let this guy finish out the year, then, make a clean break and, go with somebody else. We'll have to wait and see. But as long as that's hovering over the team from the outside, I could see where that could be a distraction. But if they get that settled, hey, this could be a team that, you want to watch out for and you don't want to play in that second half.
And that's fun, right? This is why it's fun for the rest of the league. To see a team like Essendon, who just has had zero luck whatsoever this season. I mean, 1-12, And it's not like they've been getting blown out. I mean, they almost caught the Blues this week. And boy, would that have been an incredibly damaging loss for Carlton.
Yeah.
This week. They caught the Dees earlier this season. I don't think it's going to happen again this week. But they were able to catch somebody sleeping. They're going to get better. They're going to get better. Some of these teams might get worse. A lot of these teams are going to be fighting for a spot. I think it's going to be really fun watching, as much fun as I have watching West Coast. Although I'm kind of resigned to being disappointed by them. I think they're kind of losing steam. You got another team down there at the bottom of the ladder in Essendon who has a storied history. I mean, they have to have a little bit of pride, don't they? To watch them maybe knock a couple people off and play the best spoiler you've ever seen.
Yeah, they're a team that's, it's they tried going into this season not doing a rebuild. I think that ended up costing their coach. But and I think this is a team that wants to show they're better. I don't think anybody really had them kind of at the bottom to begin the season. I think they were a second half team, but lower half. But and they will be a team to watch, and that's good for the league. You don't want gimme wins. You don't want to have unless it's your friends, North Melbourne. You don't want to see a 155-31 shellacking at the hands of Freo. You want to see competitive games, and Essendon gave Carlton one this week. And there's no reason to think if they get these guys back, they can't be competitive in the second half or the last 7-8 weeks of the year.
Right. Well, like I said, Essendon gets the Dees again this week. Dees with a comeback win this morning against Collingwood, 83-75. Causey won you money, didn't he?
Causey did. Causey, I had been taking it on the chin with my cheap little bets on DraftKings, and I dipped below a barrier I didn't want to dip below, so I was a little disappointed. And Causey got me $30 by scoring the first goal. Not only got the first goal, got the second goal. So I was happy to see that. So he got me back over the threshold. Now I'm probably plus for the year, thanks to that one little gift there. Could not bet the Carlton match for some reason. Very disappointed by that. I probably would have lost that bet anyhow, but I was disappointed I wasn't able to put any money on the Blues this week. I'm not sure if that was a glitch on DraftKings' part, but I'll just have to wait and bet on your guys again this week.
Carlton was what, 30.5?
I believe it was.
Point favorite, I think.
Yeah. Now I don't think I would take. I might have taken Essendon and the points, but I was more focused on trying to figure out the first goal of the game. And I'm not even sure who got it, to be honest with you. So I probably would have gotten that wrong. These
big favorites have been killing me. I think I was 5-3 this week.
Yeah.
So we've got enough bank to do what we've been doing, since the season started. get a buck down on everybody and parlay that baby and see what happens. But all these big favorites have just been killing me. Let me wrap up with the Dees here real quick, and then we'll get to the results, because Sydney is one of those teams that I think was another 30.5.
Yeah.
And they needed every single second of that game to get past St. Kilda. We want to talk for a second, though, about Brody Miochek for the Dees. He went down in the second quarter very awkwardly against his former team. Laid down there for about 10 minutes. Possible head and neck injuries. Reportedly, the neck injuries have been confirmed, but we haven't heard how bad it is. This guy is a talented cat. Let me tell you something. I mean, he played at Collingwood for 8 years. He was their leading goal scorer for 5 of them. Came over to the Dees this year. And so while the Dees are having success, they're starting to get dinged up. You would think he's going to be out for a little bit. They lost Andy Moniz Wakefield last week with a torn ACL. Max Gawn is dinged up. So while I'm happy that the Dees are in 5th, and while I promise that I wouldn't complain about them ever again, I do kind of give the side eye to the MASH report.
Yeah, and I mean, Brody was one of your, he was a great pickup in the offseason. I think we've talked about that in previous episodes. He was a guy that came in and really helped out, after losing Christian Petrarca. He was one of the guys they brought in, and he's kind of
they needed a goal scorer.
Yeah, and he's a guy that's come in and done that, and he's been everything you kind of asked for. And your team has been getting a little banged up. Thankfully, Causey's still rolling along and carrying the team. But you don't want to see a scary injury like that, and you're hoping for the best for him, and that it's not anything too serious.
Causey won the Neil Danaher Award, which was given at every game this week. And I don't know, did you see any of the slides, the big freeze? The slides raised money for his campaign against neurological diseases. The D's banged up, but they got Essendon this week, and then they got a bye. So maybe this is happening at just the right time for Melbourne, because this is turning into, for a team that had so much, what do I say? So much going on underneath, right? With new coach, new system. I know we've talked about this ad nauseum. For them to be in 5th place in the ladder, past the midway point of the season, pretty remarkable.
I would say, I don't know if they give a Coach of the Year award, but Stephen King right now, he would probably be my front runner for that, getting Melbourne up into the top 5.
Yeah.
Now, again, if we'll see what Josh Fraser does as the interim, coach here, but I would say Stephen King right now would have to be the front runner to win that award based on what he's done, taking that team that everybody expected would be in the second half below that top 10 and getting them not even in, the wild card or in the playoff spot, but in the top 5.
And isn't it telling how volatile the ladder is? Seeing the way that, Melbourne playing the last game of the weekend, watching them dip down all the way to 9. Could have been at 9 had they lost to Collingwood. But with the win, find themselves back up at 5. They actually gained a spot with the victory. I mean, this is a ladder that, I'll tell you what, wins and losses are, more important than ever, I think. This is just crazy. Move up and down.
It is. And you're saying, I think a lot of teams that, in that top mix kind of bouncing back and forth. Like you said, Sydney was lucky to get that win. Brisbane righted itself, beating Gold Coast. And you had a couple close games. Geelong losing 2 in a row. You didn't expect that to happen.
Yeah.
Western finding its, revitalized season here. They're back in the top 6. So it's kind of been topsy-turvy, but it's been exciting to watch.
Yeah. Geelong with that 1-point loss to Adelaide to open round 13. You had Western's 6-point win over Hawthorn. You touched on this, and we're going to talk about it. Freo its biggest margin of victory ever. 155-31 over the team I love to hate, the North Melbourne Kangaroos.
Yes, I don't think DraftKings had a 124 point differential on their betting line for this one, so I think it was safe to say you covered if you took Frio.
If you ever saw a line like that, you would just laugh. You would just say, that's a typo.
Yeah,
There is no possible way a team can get beat that bad. And yet here we are. And we thought Brisbane was bad against Greater Western, right? In that third quarter a couple weeks ago. North scored a grand total of 3 minors in the entire second half. They had 28 points at halftime. They ended with 31.
That's unbelievable that you would be boat raced that bad. When you had some decent wins this year, and you're a team that you're expecting you can make some noise here down the stretch and claw your way up towards a wild card spot, and that's certainly not happening based on what we saw, from this game. I mean, Frio showed why it is right now the class of the league.
Yeah, I mean, and I know it's Frio. They've won 12 in a row after losing their opener. It doesn't look like right now that they can be stopped, maybe slowed down, but you see some of these performances by the other top ladder teams. So we're like talking the top 4. I mean, Geelong went down. Sydney. I mean, I do not know what to think about Sydney. 104-102 over St. Kilda, but they were down huge in this game.
Yeah, and they needed, pretty much, I wouldn't say lucky, but they had a bounce go their way at the end.
Fortuitous to be sure.
Yes.
Yeah.
And very well could have lost that game and would have been kicking themselves. And hey, being a Carlton fan, I'm glad St. Kilda lost.
Oh, yeah.
That hurts. That helps me.
Absolutely.
As much as you'd like to see the upset there, Sydney winning actually helps me out. But yeah, Sydney just really, really struggling. And again, makes you question them. St. Kilda, they finally started playing like a team that, hey, they spent all that money. Tom DeKoning had his best game of the season. They're starting to see, Jack Silvani on the back end, another former Carlton guy, played well. They're starting to see the fruits of that. But boy, to fall off the cliff there at the end against Sydney, that just doesn't bode well for the Saints.
And you have to wonder at least a little bit if that's a dagger loss. I mean, I know there's 12 weeks left in this season, 11 weeks, whatever it is, double-digit weeks. I know it's sort of early that way. But Kilda is now sitting there at 12. They have 5 wins. They have 20 points. Their percentage might save them. It's 101.9, but it is dropping. And so the best team that money could buy for this season, and again, we have to mention expectation, don't we? It's not like people thought they weren't going to be around 12 to begin with, right?
Yeah.
But when you have an opportunity against the second place team in the league and you blow that, and you've got Carlton, who's won 4 in a row, breathing down your neck. I mean, how much pressure's on the Saints right now?
Oh, it's massive, and they've already come in with high expectations, like you said, and their coach kind of is real. Gary Lyon, I think he's kind of like trying to laugh it off and try to, I don't know, just laugh away the problems and try to be a funny guy and the things I've seen around with the media. But he's got to take this a little more seriously because they're not playing up to expectations, and he's not coming out of this looking pretty good the way they're going. That
might work when you lose to the second place team in the league.
Yeah,
but it doesn't work when you had them by like 35 points.
Yeah, and you really realistically should have won the game.
Absolutely,
pulled them out.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So we've got questions with I feel like this ladder is just full of questions right now. So we got ladders at the top. We got questions at the top. We got questions in the middle. We got questions at the bottom. There's Carlton's win against Essendon. There's the Dees win against Collingwood. Greater Western getting a bye. Good or bad? Timing wise.
I would say it might blunt their momentum a little bit, but they do. I mean, they're coming back against Carlton, and if they've been watching Carlton the last 4 weeks, they know what awaits them. So I think they should come out prepared.
Yeah.
And not just thinking they're going to walk over Carlton. This isn't the team it was a month ago.
Yeah, and they got St. Kilda this week, and we've already talked about how much the Saints have been stung, and this could be just yet another nail in their coffin. I mean, I see a lot of teams in that ladder, and we'll get to it here in a second. I see a lot of teams in that ladder that are starting to look at must-win games. I mean, this is a little different than the Blues. I mean, when you're 1-8 and you have any kind of dream of making the playoffs, of course, every game's going to be must-win. But you've got teams that have been hanging around that 10 line, right? They've been hanging around that 10 line, and they're just wasting opportunities at this point.
They really are. They really are, and you can't do. I mean, as you've seen with even with the drop to 10, I think it's made it exciting, and there's no guarantees for these teams, and it's really, it's going to be fun to see how this ends up. Who gets that 7 through 10 spot, and then who gets left out on the cusp, because that team, probably will be a pretty good team. And I think it's something good they've done is adding these extra 2 teams. Because Western kind of got left out in the cold last year. Probably could have made a little bit of a run had it gotten in, had there been a 10-team playoff last year. But
Joe, don't say that too loud. What you just said.
What did I just say?
That 10 teams is a good idea. Don't.
Okay.
You don't. Yeah, you don't want the entire country coming after you. I'll talk a little bit about that later in my final thought. But
there you go.
But Joe, just be careful. Mm-hmm. Careful what you're saying now about having, oh my God, 10 teams in a playoff. I can't believe it. Here's the fixture. It only took me 14 weeks to use the word fixture, people. Shame on me. As we said, Western, another prime time. You know what? I'm pretty sure they did not include Western in their wish list for primetime games when they came out with the second half of this schedule.
Yeah.
But, having the Bulldogs in another primetime game so people could see the grit and guts of this team. 2.5-point favorite against Adelaide Thursday morning here at Marvel. How do you not take the Bulldogs?
I think you have to. And again, though, Adelaide's one of those teams. Both of them. It's like I put Hawthorn in that category. I put Geelong. Yet sometimes you don't know what you're going to get, and
they don't make it easy.
They will come back and take it to Hawthorn. Adelaide's pretty good, and the fact that Adelaide's getting 2.5 points there, it would.
I think Joe had the big freeze. I think he's going down the slide right now. Sorry, Joe, you froze there for a second. I thought you were doing. I thought you were doing the big freeze slide.
I wouldn't be surprised if Adelaide wins the game outright. Although I would put my money probably on Western right now.
I was gonna say, don't say that. I'm taking the Dogs because they're footy gold right now.
Yeah.
I mean, not only they're winning, but they're entertaining. And they're banged up. So that's the Thursday game. Friday night, Geelong Gold Coast. This was a top 6 game until this past weekend. I suppose with the Suns at 7, you can still sort of consider it a top 6 game. But the Cats are 22.5-point favorites.
I would be.
And this is where my theory of big favorites comes in. I just need to put the line somewhere. I don't know. See, to me right now, 30.5 for a favorite is too much. It's just too much. 22.5, though? Maybe.
Possible, but I'm again. I mean, Gold Coast is coming off a loss to Brisbane, but Gold Coast had high expectations coming into the season. People thought they'd be a top 4 team.
Yeah.
The Long has struggled the last few weeks. I would be very tempted.
They get the home game. You know, Gold Coast got to travel for this one.
Yeah, I would think I'd take Gold Coast in the points, thinking it's
wow,
going to be
22.5. Maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe. Second game on Friday is Dees Essendon, the rematch of the Bombers loan. Quit laughing. What are you laughing for? This isn't funny.
Well, it wasn't
matter
funny
with
watching
you?
that second half a couple months ago when Essendon was pouring it on against them. And I'm looking at the line here and I'm seeing 31.5, and I'm thinking, I'm not sure what it was the first game. I would imagine it'd be right around that. I would tempted right now to take Melbourne because I don't think Essendon's quite healthy again. So why not? I mean,
how dare you kick me in the face like that? Unbelievable. But I do see where you're coming from. Yeah. I do see where you're coming from. I don't think it's going to happen. I think the D's are probably still a little sore from that game.
Yeah.
I mean, they've got to be knowing it's the only success the Bombers have had this year, right?
And
31.5. Now, 31.5. I'm kind of with you on that.
Yeah.
I think that's kind of big. I mean, like we were saying, the D's are a little banged up. I don't know, 31.5. And again, we got to mention, these are early lines. When the actual teams come out later on this week, they will totally change.
We have seen that they have changed wildly from our original picks to what actually comes out like on Wednesday night, Thursday morning.
Yeah, absolutely. Which is why we wait. Okay? I mean, it doesn't seem to help me from week to week. I was 5-3, but again, that's not going to buy you that yacht. That's for sure. Saturday, North and West Coast. Please, Eagles. Please. Can you please give them another Frio type beating? I would love that for you and your fan base and your young team.
And to see them getting 6.5 points is surprising. I wouldn't think North would be favored over you and I and 20 other guys off the street right now, the way they played in that last game against Frio. To see them being favored by 6.5, even though they are at home, West Coast has to travel. Still, I would be very tempted to take to put my money on the West Coast Eagles for that one.
You know how I feel about the Eagles. I mean,
I know.
Yeah, I think that's a no-brainer. Whether I had an axe to grind with the Roos or not. I mean, come on, it's the Eagles. Second game on Saturday is Port and Sydney, and Sydney is only giving 17.5.
Oof.
Is that in response to what happened last week against St. Kilda?
I guess, but I don't see Sydney coming out flat 2 weeks in a row.
Yeah.
And Port, Port to me is one of those teams that they've been mystifying and just more down than up this year. I would take Sydney and give those points all day long if that's what it stays at. I wouldn't be surprised if that doesn't jump up much higher later in the week. But
now that is a big trip for the Swans. This game at Adelaide Oval, so maybe that's part of it. Brisbane and the Richmond Lions, the biggest line of the week for now. 46.5 is what the Tigers are getting.
Tigers coming off the bye too, at home. Brisbane, boy, they made Gold Coast look foolish over the weekend. Kind of looked like they got back on track, or at least took a step toward getting back on track.
Yeah.
This one,
and they're still sitting there at 9. It's not like they're in a comfortable spot on the ladder.
Yeah, they're in Hobart though. They got they're both teams are going to be traveling for this. Maybe that takes a little bit on. Maybe Richmond stays within that 46.5. Off the top of my head, though, boy, I would think that Brisbane should cover that. But you don't know which Brisbane you're going to get, really.
Isn't that the truth?
Yeah.
St. Kilda, Greater Western, ends the fixture on a Sunday at Marvel, and the Saints giving 3.5.
I would think Greater Western. I had them erroneously playing Carlton this week because that's Carlton's next match. They do have
Right.
they do have St. Kilda this week, and I think coming
Well,
off
I
the
mean,
bye,
you mentioned Carlton's on the bye, so I mean,
yeah,
you know,
yeah,
it's
but
all
I mean,
good.
you know, Greater Western's coming off the bye. St. Kilda's reeling. You know, if Greater Western plays like it did the 2 weeks before the bye, I think they cover that 3.5 easily.
I feel like the 3.5 is a travel 3.5, and this is really a
Yeah.
pick 'em.
Yeah.
You know, and again, it'll be interesting to see what the bye does to the Giants because they were riding pretty high, and then all of a sudden, they had to stop.
Yeah.
You know, at probably the worst possible time, and you know they're sitting there at 10, and if not for the fallible Magpies, you know they're probably lucky to be 10. So I don't know. We'll see. Buys this week, of course, your Blues. Collingwood this is probably the best time for a buy for these guys because
they
they
need
need
to.
they need to figure it out
Yeah.
in a hurry. Frio and Hawthorn, a couple top 6 teams, have the week off. Joe, the next slide, please. We will talk about the ladder.
Yes, there we go.
For 14 weeks, and you see that I have named the 3 categories. And we've probably talked about this enough, but we'll just quickly go through this. Of course, there's Frio at the top, 48 points. If you divide that by 4, it's 12, and that's how many wins in a row they have. Sydney, Hawthorn. We talked about Geelong. Where are they going? Hawthorn. You know, you didn't want them to be a question, but I think they've got a couple questions there. Melbourne, which probably does not belong there, but here they are. You know, because they have found some consistency at least a little bit. Now we'll see what happens this week against Essendon. And then Western. I don't know if I'm impressed by a team more right now than the Bulldogs. You know, with apologies to your Blues, okay, who have totally done an undertaker as far as getting off the mat, right?
Like that. Yes.
Yes. Western. I mean, my goodness. Can they keep this run going? Can they actually have that first week off?
You know, I would think they're making a case, and they're on their way to doing that. You know, the one thing that stands out about that top 6 is Frio not only still holding the 4-point advantage, but now has the best percentage in the league. With that thrashing they had against North, pushed their percentage past Sydney.
That is a very good point, Joe.
Yeah,
very good point. And in the same vein, you look at Western's percentage, and you're like, it's not horrible, but if they're around that wild card line, you know, for the rest of the season,
it works against them.
Yeah, I mean, it could be significant. You look at the percentages in the wild card section there, with Gold Coast, Adelaide, Brisbane, Greater Western, all of them north of 100. Gold Coast probably wondering why they're in 7th right now, right?
I would think so. Yeah, I would.
You know,
think
being
so.
a top 6 team most of the season, why are we in 7th right now? Adelaide, I think, knows why it's 8th.
Yeah.
Brisbane, I'm sure, knows why it's 9th. And Greater Western is probably glad that they're 10th because they've been playing well lately, and that's great. And then you've got Hope and Nope.
10th spot with the coming off the bye, they didn't lose their spot there because Collingwood didn't up lose that one.
I was going to say, Collingwood did them a favor. St. Kilda did them a favor. You know, so they can stay at 10. I couldn't think of another name for Hope and Nope. So, you know, I think it's pretty clear cut on what that means. And there's your Magpies, which, you know, Joe, I don't want to say we called this, but they've been at 20. I feel like they've been at 22 forever.
They have been, and you know, we talked about the problems they had chasing points after they rested guys and let some games slip there in the first half of the year, resting Scott Pendlebury so he could get the record at home, and I think that's come back to bite them. And they really haven't been the same team since that game. And they lost Jamie Elliott for the season. They've got Nick Dacos, but he's about it right now. That's really trying to hold that team together.
Yeah.
And it's they're going to be tough. It's going to be tough for them to finish the year, and I would expect them to be in that hope and nope category the rest of this campaign.
They're sitting there at 22. St. Kilda, Carleton, North Melbourne, Port, West Coast, Richmond, Essendon wraps up the ladder for this week. Joe, do you have a final thought this week?
I do have a final thought, and it's kind of just about the week in general and how it went. And living here on the East Coast and not really seeing many games over the week, but getting a chance to listen to some of them or to wake up and catch the very end of like the games that start at 5 a.m. over here and catch them waking up. And I was able to do that Thursday and Friday and was treated to some of the best finishes, a 1-point game. And I think another was a 4 or 5 point, and listening to some of these radio announcers, listening to it for the Carleton game and watching some of that. Very entertaining. What a great week it was. 5 of the 8 games decided by 8 points or fewer. Only 3 real blowouts. It was a good week of football for the Australian fans, and for over here, getting a chance not to really see these games, but to wake up and catch the ending of them. Very entertaining. I was impressed by the way these teams played, and I'd love listening to the announcers and how excited they get when these games are close.
Point of order, if you will allow me.
Sure.
1-point game, 6-point game, another 6-point game. Your game was 5 points. The Dees were 8 points.
Yeah.
That's more than half the schedule.
Yeah.
And you know what, Joe? Yeah. And your final thought made me remember a factoid that we almost forgot. And it concerns the Western Bulldogs once again. And part of the secret to them being in the top 6, you know what I'm talking about now, right?
Yes, I remember now. I remember.
So, do you remember what it is?
I believe I know the category. I don't remember the record. Is it 6-0?
They are 6-0 this year in games decided by 10 points or less.
Yep.
Where last year they were 3-3.
Yeah.
Now, to be 6-0 in those games at this point of the season, I think is an achievement in itself. But to take the road the Bulldogs have taken and still be unbeaten in these close games, I mean, you can look at it this way. You mentioned it earlier. I mean, it's not hard to argue that they expanded the playoffs because, a really good Western team was left out in the cold last year.
Yep.
But if one of those games, one of those 10 points or less games last year, if they're 4-2 instead of 3-3, we're talking about a different history.
Yeah, they're in. And I can't remember who got the 8th spot last year, but it would have. It definitely would have.
This year they are not leaving it to chance, and that's one of the best stats I saw. Reading through the timelines on the AFL.com.au app was that Western 6-0 so far this year in games 10 points or less. So good for the Bulldogs. Thank you for indulging me. Like I said, I wanted to get that stat in because we were both like, oh, yeah, we got to talk about that. And we went an hour and didn't talk about it. So anyway.
And just to point out here, they had those 4 points. If they had won one more game, they would have nudged Hawthorn out of the 10th spot last year. I just looked it up. They would have had the better percentage. And Hawthorn went on a nice little run there. I believe they were in the semifinals. That could have been Western last year.
Yeah. How about that? 6-0. Bulldogs have got it going on, that's for sure. My final thought this week deals with the playoff system that everybody loves to talk about and more people love to hate. Joe has said it earlier today. I'll say it now. I don't understand where all this hate is coming from. You're so worried about watering down a playoff field that you are neglecting to realize what is going to do for you, okay? The NFL has wild cards, okay? They have expanded their playoffs over the years. The NBA has a wild card system similar, not the same, but similar to footy now, where 7, 8, 9, 10 play each other to get into that top 8. Okay? In all of these cases, these are good games. I don't know why you're worried about blowouts between teams that are from 7 to 10. I mean, if you look at the ladder, you've got 28, 28, 28, and 24 points right now. Are you trying to tell me that Greater Western at Gold Coast and Brisbane at Adelaide won't be 2 bangers?
They should be.
What are we talking about here? A comment was made after one of the games this weekend, and I can't remember which one it was. And this goes back to Joe and I really enjoying the radio broadcast, especially when the AFL can't figure out where we can watch these games. But anyway, I digress.
Now, you can't say that too loud either, because
probably not, right?
We want them to invite us there.
Exactly. But, do a little better. I'm just saying. So we like the radio, right? But the comment was made, okay, say a team gets into the playoffs and only wins 10 games. Is that a successful season? And I just don't understand the blanket rationale that is thrown on all of these teams. We all know we can go almost every team on this ladder and talk about the changes these teams have had in the first 13, 14 weeks of this season. Okay? It's not about how many wins that makes you successful. It's about how you got there, to me. Now, does that mean all 10-win teams is deserving of a playoff spot? Maybe not, but they get their opportunity to try. And to me, that's the most important thing. And if you still want to argue with me about a 10-team playoff, I will say this. When it was 8 teams, you were still giving the top 4 teams a second chance. And if that doesn't make your playoff bracket weak, I don't know what does. Because you're the only one I know that gives that kind of second chance to the top 4 teams in the case that they have a bad week. You're not going to see that in the NFL. So keep that in mind when you're talking bad about this expanded format and just assuming you're not going to see any good games.
And I think that's a positive. They give teams a second chance. You don't see it anywhere else. I'm in favor of that. I'm glad they kept that part.
See, I'm not. I think I kind of don't care either way. But if you're going to complain about that and not complain about how, the top 4 teams get 2 shots to advance, I just don't understand how that works.
Yeah. We beg to differ.
I don't think you have to beg. I think you'll just differ.
I think I will.
That's our show for this week. Thanks for joining us here on WTF What the Footy. If you're watching us, it's probably on YouTube at WTF What the Footy. We are on Twitter at WTF What the Footy. Did you post your picks last week?
I did not. I did not get a chance to. Things have quieted down on my end. I should be able to do it this week.
Okay. Well, you can find my picks on our Twitter page, and maybe you can find Joe's picks. And I got to tell you something. Tail Joe, okay? He made money in the Kentucky Derby. He made money in the Preakness. He made money in this past weekend's Belmont Stakes. I don't think his talents are just for the horses, if you know what I'm saying.
Until Causey came along this week, I was having a rough patch on footy.
Well, I'll tell you what,
we'll see if I can bounce back.
One good wager can solve a lot of ills.
True.
So we're on Twitter. We're also on Facebook at WTF What the Footy, Spotify and Apple Podcasts at WTF What the Footy, and we're on Instagram, I think, at WTF What the Footy.
Yeah.
Maybe. Still
we're
working
there.
on it.
It's blank, but we're there.
Still working on it. For Joe Rutter, I'm Robert Gregory. See you next time.
Showtime.
I thought for sure we were going to come in under an hour today.
I did too. I looking. I was like, oh, we're going to do this.
We got through like the newsy stuff, and I was like, okay, this is good.
Yeah.
This is good. You know what it is? if our teams weren't winning,
we wouldn't have as much to talk about.
this would be a shorter show. Yeah.
Yeah.
If the Dees would have crapped the bed this morning,
Mm-hmm.
if Carlton would have pulled one of the all-time boners and lose to Essendon when they're trying to, make the playoffs.
Yeah. I tell you what, though, I get it. It's weird listening to those games that start at 1:15. I'm waking up and I'm hearing bits and pieces and I'm trying to stay awake. And I fall asleep and I wake back up and I'm like, what's going on? You're in a fog and you're trying to figure out what's going on. And you fall back asleep and you wake up again. And
Joe, I'm in a fog most of the time anyway. But you're right. You're right. I mean, sometimes I'll turn a game on knowing I'm going to fall asleep. And I invariably wake up in the fourth quarter. And of course, I won't go back to sleep because now I got to know what the score is.
Yeah.
I got to know what's going on. And if it's like a 30-point game, I'm like, okay, I roll back over.
Yeah.
I go back to sleep, And then I wake up and, I hear that telltale hum from an ABC broadcast that has ended.
Yes.
That static,
That's what I awakened to today.
Is that right?
Yes.
Is that right? Yeah. I woke up and I woke up to alerts that said Collingwood was up 4 with 13 to go. The close game alert.
Mm-hmm.
Which honestly, I wish they wouldn't give those close game alert with that much time left. I feel like that's, I don't know. That doesn't work for me.
They should have waited till it got to.
Well, I mean, I think close game alerts are like 5 minutes in.
Yeah.
Because as we've seen, those 5 minutes could be 15, 20.
Yeah.
But after seeing that, I fully expected to open the app and have bad news, and there it was. There it was. Thanks to Causey. Your boy making you money.
That's right.
I'm just saying.